Something shifted. Not loudly, not in a way they could immediately point at or explain, but deep beneath the surface, where instincts speak before logic catches up, something moved. And somehow it's about you. You didn't announce it. You didn't demand attention. You didn't even change your routine in any obvious way. From the outside, it looks like nothing happened. But that's exactly why they missed it. Because the real shift never makes noise. It happens in silence, in restraint, in the moment you stopped reacting the way they expected you to, the moment you chose distance over explanation, the moment you understood something and decided not to share it. They felt that. Even if they can't name it yet, they felt it. That subtle disconnect, that unfamiliar calm in you. The absence of urgency where there used to be emotion. The way you no longer chase clarity, no longer defend your position, no longer try to be understood. That's what unsettled them. Because people are comfortable when they can predict you, when they know how far they can push, when your reactions give them a sense of control. But now, you've become unreadable. And that scares them more than anger ever could. Because anger they can work with. Silence? Silence leaves them alone with their own thoughts. And that's where the shift begins to echo. They start replaying conversations, reanalyzing your words, your pauses, your absence, trying to figure out when exactly they lost their grip on you. But here's the part they don't realize yet. They didn't lose control because you fought back. They lost it because you stopped playing entirely. And now, something bigger is unfolding. They thought they understood you. That was their first mistake. They studied your patience and called it passivity. They watched you stay quiet and labeled you weak. They saw you give chances and assumed you had no limits. Everything about you, in their eyes, was something to manage, not something to respect, because you didn't react the way others did. You didn't argue for dominance. You didn't rush to correct every misunderstanding. So they got comfortable crossing lines, comfortable speaking to you in ways they wouldn't dare with someone louder, sharper, more unpredictable. They mistook your control for lack of awareness. But you saw everything. Every tone shift, every subtle disrespect disguised as a joke. Every moment they tested how far they could go without consequence. And what confused them most was that you let it happen. Not because you didn't notice, but because you were measuring. You were watching who they became when they thought you wouldn't respond. You were learning their patterns without interrupting them, letting them reveal their true position without interference. They thought they were getting away with it, that you were too unaware to push back, too soft to draw a line, too dependent to walk away. So they kept going, further than they should have, further than they ever would have, if they understood who they were really dealing with. And now that same silence they once used against you is the very thing they can't read anymore. Because it no longer feels like tolerance. It feels like distance. It feels like something has already closed. And they're starting to realize they weren't studying you. They were exposing themselves. And you were letting them. While they were busy misreading you, something else was happening. Quietly. Precisely. Without spectacle. You were evolving. Not in the loud, performative way people expect. Not in a way that needed validation or witnesses, but internally, where real shifts happen. You were recalibrating everything. Your standards, your boundaries, your understanding of people. You started seeing patterns instead of moments, intent instead of excuses, energy instead of words. And once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. That's the part no one talks about. Growth doesn't feel like power at first. It feels like distance. Suddenly, conversations that once made sense feel shallow. Connections that once felt important start to feel forced. You notice things you used to ignore, and you stop explaining yourself. Not because you don't have the words, but because you realize not everyone deserves access to your clarity. So you became quieter, more selective, more still, but not empty. No, you were becoming sharper. Every moment you didn't react, you were gaining control. Every time you chose silence over emotion, you were strengthening something they couldn't see. And the truth is, you weren't holding back. You were outgrowing. Outgrowing the need to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. Outgrowing the urge to correct people who already decided who you are. Outgrowing environments that only recognize noise, not depth. That's why the shift feels so subtle on the outside, but so undeniable underneath. Because this isn't a reaction, it's a repositioning. And they can feel it now. Even if they don't fully understand it yet, something about you is no longer accessible. And that's when the tension starts to build. The turning point didn't look like a confrontation. There was no final argument, no dramatic exit, no moment where everything exploded and forced a conclusion. That's what they expected. Because chaos is easy to recognize. It gives them something to respond to, something to defend against. But you didn't give them that. You gave them nothing. And that's what changed everything. It was the moment you stopped explaining, stopped correcting, stopped offering energy to situations that were built on misunderstanding you. Not out of anger, out of clarity. A quiet, irreversible clarity that didn't need to be announced. You realized something simple, but dangerous. They were never confused. They were comfortable. Comfortable with who they thought you were. Comfortable benefiting from your patience. Comfortable assuming you would always stay the same. So instead of fighting their perception, you removed yourself from it. Emotionally first. That's what they didn't catch. Because physically, you were still there. Still present. Still responding. Just enough to keep things functional. But something deeper had already disconnected. You stopped investing meaning into their words. Stopped attaching yourself to their reactions. Stopped needing anything from them at all. And once that happened, there was nothing left for them to control. No emotional leverage. No predictable reaction. No way to pull you back into the dynamic they were used to. That's when the shift became real. Not when you left, but when you became unreachable while still standing in front of them. That kind of distance, it confuses people, because they can't argue with it. They can't fix it. They can't even fully see it. They just feel it. Something has ended, and they weren't part of the decision. That's when the power dynamic breaks, not with noise, but with absence. And now they're starting to sense what's coming next. At first, they tried to ignore it, convince themselves nothing had really changed, that you were just in a mood, that eventually you'd go back to how you were before. But time didn't confirm their version. It exposed it. Because you didn't return. Not to the old reactions, not to the old access, not to the version of you they were comfortable with. And that's when the unraveling began. Slow, quiet, internal. They started noticing the gaps, the conversations that no longer went deep, the energy you no longer offered, the subtle way you stopped reaching, stopped caring to fill the silence. And suddenly the control they thought they had felt like it slipped through their hands without warning. So they tried to fix it, not directly, not honestly, but in small, calculated ways. A message here, a different tone there, a hint of interest they never showed before, testing if you'd respond the same way. You didn't. And that's what unsettled them, because now they're dealing with something unfamiliar. You without attachment, no urgency, no emotional pull, No need to win them back or prove anything. Just presence, without access. That kind of detachment creates pressure, because it forces them to sit with something they avoided before. The possibility that they miscalculated you, that they underestimated someone who never needed them as much as they assumed. And now, the questions start. Did I push too far? Did I lose something I won't get back? Why does it feel different this time? But here's the part they won't say out loud. They can feel you slipping out of their reach, and there's nothing they can do to reverse it. No argument to win, no emotion to manipulate, no version of you left to return to. Just distance, growing quietly, consistently, without resistance. And that kind of loss, it doesn't explode, it echoes. And by the time they fully understand it, you're already gone. What they're witnessing now isn't a reaction, it's a transformation. Not the kind that announces itself or seeks validation, but the kind that permanently shifts how you move, how you see, how you allow. You didn't just step back from them, you stepped into yourself. Your standards changed first, quietly, firmly, without negotiation. You stopped tolerating what once felt normal. Stopped making space for inconsistency, for half-effort, for disguised disrespect. Not because you became cold, but because you became clear. Clear about what you bring. Clear about what you deserve. Clear about what no longer aligns with who you are becoming. And with that clarity came distance. Not forced, not dramatic, just natural. Like something that no longer fits, so it falls away. You no longer feel the need to explain your silence. You don't rush to repair things you didn't break. You don't chase people who benefited from misunderstanding you. That version of you is gone. Replaced by someone more still, more selective, more controlled. Someone who listens more than they speak, who observes more than they reacts, who moves with intention, not emotion. And the most unsettling part for them, you didn't become harder to love. You became harder to access. There's a difference, because now access to you requires alignment, consistency, respect, awareness. Things they never had to offer before. That's why it feels different. That's why they feel it slipping. Because you're no longer operating from habit. You're operating from standards. And standards don't bend for familiarity. They don't soften for history. They don't adjust just because someone finally realizes your value. By the time they see you clearly, you've already decided what they no longer qualify for. And now, by the time it all becomes clear to them, you're no longer standing where they left you. You're not waiting for recognition, not hoping for understanding, not looking back for closure. Because what shifted didn't just change your position, it changed your identity. You are no longer the version of yourself they learned to navigate. The one they studied, tested, underestimated. That version served its purpose. It revealed everything you needed to see. And now, you've moved beyond it. Quietly, completely, irreversibly. There's a certain kind of power that doesn't need to prove itself. A presence that doesn't ask to be acknowledged. It just is. And that's what you've become. Not louder, not more aggressive, not desperate to be seen, just undeniable. The kind of presence people feel before they understand it. The kind of absence that lingers long after you're gone. Because now, when they think of you, it's not with certainty, it's with questions, with fragments, with moments they replay, trying to find where they misread you. But the answer isn't in what you said. It's in what you stopped giving. That's the part they can't undo. Because access to you was never permanent. It was conditional. And they only realize the conditions after they've lost them. So they're left with the echo of your silence, of your restraint, of the version of you they thought would always stay. But you didn't stay. You shifted. And that shift, it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was final. Because now, you don't just walk away from what doesn't see you. You outgrow it so completely. It no longer has the power to recognize you at all. And that's when it becomes real. Something big did shift. And it was never about them. It was always about you.